Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined as always by Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we've got a 2-game slate tonight in the NBA on Thursday night. Nate and I are going to be looking at the Bucks and the Celtics in this one. We are going to be switching up this format a little bit for you guys as we move forward. You're going to see we're going to be putting up a bunch more of the stuff we're talking about here on screen for you guys with some graphics, so you can check that out. We're just going to jump right into these games for you as well, not necessarily needing to read all of those lines, and a few more changes that you'll see coming up that we thought we'd start implementing as we get into these playoffs. We are going to also be reviewing the day, the picks before, from the night before rather. So we can start with that right here and just get into a little bit of how we did last night. We made a bunch of picks about a couple of different games, as well as a number of player props. We had Phoenix -5, that hit. We had the Grizzlies and the Clippers going over 233.5. Nate said, "Oh wait, Norman Powell's playing. Yeah, give me the over." And we promptly hit the over there. LeBron, Nate correctly called 24.5 points went over. Drew 16.5 points. I believe he had 17 with 11 minutes into the game, and then he finished with a career best, I believe, 51 points last night. Dude went off. Also a great call by Nate on that one. Bagley the third, not a great night. We had him over 24.5 points and rebounds combined. Did not make that at all or even close. But that was the only miss on the night, going 5 for 6, because Nate also correctly called Chris Paul going over 21.5 points and assists combined. So we are looking to stay hot for you guys on this one. Like I said, we're going to be talking about Boston and Milwaukee in this one. So Nate, give us a little bit of what we can expect in in Milwaukee tonight.
Yeah, it's tough to predict exactly how hard each team's going to be going, right? I mean, it is for the number one seed, which, by the way, the books completely expect Milwaukee to clinch, -2,000 for that to still be the number one seed here. So it's a question of, like, how much does Boston really want to go for this? Even if they get the win, it's very unlikely that Milwaukee loses enough games. So that's why, I mean, the first thought is I like the Bucks. I mean, the Celtics coming off a clear trap loss in Washington, so maybe they were looking ahead to this one. But you haven't seen enough from Boston to think that they can beat a Bucks team that's 26-4 in their last 30 games, right? Even with the Bucks on a back-to-back, -2 or 2.5 right now at home seems solid. I mean, they're 9-2 on back-to-backs this season. Actually shoot better from three, hitting 16.5, actually have better three-point defense, holding opponents to 10 threes at 31%. That is huge. Holding opponents to 109 points per game, which has led to 8-3 to the under, which leads me to steer away from the total, which, certainly these teams do go over when they play in the regular season. They don't go over in the playoffs, though, and that's why you're kind of like, how much is this game going to have a playoff atmosphere? The Celtics last season held Tatum out in the equivalent of this game. It seems like they're going to have everybody. It seems like the Bucks are going to have everybody, and it's going to be, full balls to the wall here in terms of defensive presence. But, I mean, Rob Williams is on a minutes limit. Grant Williams is dealing with an illness that might keep him out. It really just leaves Al Horford to deal with Giannis, who's just on an incredible tear in his last 12, scoring 32.5 points in 31 minutes per game at home. Like, just more than these are Wilt numbers he's putting up. And the Bucks, just the pace they play at as well, it leads me to think about, well, I don't necessarily trust over for the game because of that playoff vibe. Like, maybe it slows down in the fourth quarter, but both these teams are playing incredibly fast in the first. And since the All-Star break, Bucks 106 pace in the first quarter, a 124 offensive rating. Boston 101.5 pace for the first, and a 120 offensive rating. This is compared to like 96, 97 that Boston plays at for the entire game. So 60.5 points for the first quarter is actually what I'm even more confident about than the Bucks winning this game, is that, Giannis sets the tone early. The Bucks stay hot from last night when, like you said, Drew drops 17 in like 10 minutes and they score 150. And they just stay hot, and the Celtics come along a little bit as they try to bounce back from their rough showing in Washington.
Yeah, that was difficult and not unwanted, though, as that really helped the futures bet that we put down right around the All-Star break for Milwaukee to overtake Boston and get that one seed, and Boston really helped them out with that bad loss. I would say the pace is huge. Is everything in this one. You say the thing you like first here. You're talking about points in the first quarter, 60.5, and that definitely has been the case majorly for the Bucks. No matter really, especially when they're playing at home. I should say it doesn't matter. It's not that it doesn't matter where they're playing. They are much a bit faster at home and playing that well, and that's where a number of their games have been as of before that road trip that they just came home from. They did have 3 in a row there and played super fast, dropping about 128 points per game in those 3. Granted, it was against some really bad defenses, but I don't really know what you want to do with this Boston defense when it plays Milwaukee. I mean, it's been really good in the last roughly like 10 games, and I think you've seen Boston games be a little bit lower scoring than you were seeing at the beginning of the season. Obviously, that's combined with a bit of the regression in 3-point shooting that they saw over that time as well. But the pace is still there, and the defense, while it's good in a lot of ways with Rob Will back, it's much better. Let's just be very clear. It's directly correlated to Rob Will being in there. This is a team that they're going to come up against that can still get its buckets down low, more so because it's got at least 2 or 3 guys that are around the same size as Rob Will that are going to be tumbling at him. But you always mention Papa Al Horford in these instances as well, and obviously he's likely to get the start there, and then we'll see what happens from there in terms of obviously then Rob Will and Grant Williams would be major blows if they're not there for that down low presence, but probably just adds to this being a little bit higher scoring, and at least in the first quarter, I think you can expect them both to come out ripping and roaring, even if it is more of what you would consider a playoff atmosphere. It still is a March technically, right? It's the 30th, and so there's still the likelihood that they're not necessarily playing quite as hard on defense, and even if they are, they're both just coming out so focused that you can probably expect a bunch of threes to go in early, and that's usually the MO between these two teams. Play at a fast pace, get some pretty good shots from deep, and that gets you to that over. So I mean, I'm not scared of the 236 over, to be honest with you, either. I think even at home for this Bucks team going over, it feels right, because I don't think they're necessarily going to be able to stop this Boston team quite as much on the second leg of a back-to-back for Milwaukee as well, like we talked about, and probably the likelihood to go over in those situations for them where they've got a little bit more of an eye for the basket and maybe a little bit less legs on defense to be able to run with this team as well. So if Boston's going to keep it that fast, I like it at that pick. But let's move on to one more pick that we like for this one, and I think that's just the Bucks to cover 2.5 at this point in a game where, once again, if Robert Williams III and or Grant Williams don't play, I mean, how much do you think that impacts this?
Oh, hugely. And it's a question of the Celtics really saving Rob Williams for the playoffs, because, I mean, how much do you care about this game if you're not going to be able to catch the Bucks either way? And we saw last year that they just held out Tatum entirely when he could have absolutely played in that game in April against the Bucks. And yeah, I mean, Rob hasn't played just over 20 minutes once since coming back. He's averaging 17 minutes. He struggled in his last one out there. 5 points per game, 7 rebounds per game. He went scoreless with a negative 14 rating in Washington here. Washington shot 66% inside the arc, and that's obviously very concerning. The free throw discrepancy is something you look at for the Bucks. They still shoot 28 free throws a game on back-to-backs and hold opponents under 20. Celtics never get to the line. But yeah, the 3-point shooting is what has allowed Boston to hang in these games and what has forced all of them over really in the regular season. They're hitting about 18 threes at 38% in these recent ones to hang with the Bucks, who are scoring 125 at home their last 3 against the Celtics. So certainly some over numbers to look at, but I look at the road home splits for the Celtics since the start of January. They're 13-10 on the road. Everything is worse. Defense is worse. Scoring is worse. 3-point percentage, 3 points worse. And in their last 9 road games in particular, only 34% from deep in those ones. So if the Bucks, this year kind of changing it up to both defend the 3-point line and the interior. They've shown the ability to do that on back-to-backs, partially because Bud has done a good job, with rest and management and everything. And while those guys, Drew and Giannis, did carry a relatively big load yesterday against Indy, I mean, it's not really that physical of a game. I mean, facing a team of rookies in the Pacers there, I think they will be up for this game in terms of one more. And yeah, I'm not betting against Giannis right now. I feel fine betting against the Celtics on the road because they're just still kind of mired in this malaise. Like, just because they beat the Kings once, I don't think we can trust them After coming home and smashing the Pacers and Spurs, like I still don't trust this team to finish the regular season strong. There's definitely something going on with them.
It does seem that way. And some of the chatter in Boston, if I'm not mistaken, which God help you if you have to listen to Boston radio sometimes, Boston Sports Radio. No, just kidding. But if you are, you're probably hearing a lot of guys mad at Joe Mazzulla right now, which I don't know how that turn happened so quickly. But I don't know if it's necessarily him, quote unquote, losing the locker room. There's been somewhat of a seemingly lack of effort on defense. I will say that. I know their rating has been a bit higher than, especially since Robert Williams came back, and that's fine. He erases a lot of the deficiencies, but the effort didn't seem to quite be there against the Wizards for sure. And then you talk about the 3-point shooting variance for this team, potentially, coming back to haunt them a bit if they're not going to be able to score other ways. At the same time, we saw Jason Tatum sort of start to attack a bit more in the playoffs before he got to the finals anyway, in a way that really helped them, even though he had some up and down games. I think that is a huge part of this is, are you attacking for the Celtics versus just not necessarily settling, but relying on 3-pointers to carry you. And this one, I think the Bucks just come ready to play. I don't think they're too concerned with that game last night. And in this one, they're going to be rearing to go. So 2.5 feels right. But let's go ahead, Nate, and jump right into the Pelicans and the Nuggets and some of the lines that we have in this one.
Yeah, I like Pelicans to cover here. I think it opened larger than this, but it's plus 6.5 at this point. And it's certainly a desperation factor that the Nuggets don't have, right? I mean, they're talking about Joker being questionable with the calf, and it's a back-to-back situation for him. So he might sit this one, he might sit the next one. That's obviously massive news, and that would certainly help if you're taking the Pelicans to cover here. But I think they can cover even if Jokic is out there. I like what Jonas Valanciunas has been doing lately. I know he got kind of run off the floor by the Warriors, the small ball Warriors, and that's going to be a hit. But I mean, if Jokic is out there, that means he gets to play. And he's been a huge part of their offense lately. The Pels, who, granted, they played some pretty bad competition in 5 games before that Golden State game, but up to 121 offensive rating, hitting 13 threes at 45% almost, which is huge for a team that has struggled from downtown all year. Trey Murphy coming on strong. And 30 assists to 14 turnovers. A really balanced scoring effort at times. Also have a guy in Ingram who can just get his own shot. Am concerned about CJ McCollum's hand injury at this point. I mean, he's been cold in his last 7. His usage rate has absolutely dropped below where Valanciunas is. So that's why I think it's fine to look at Jonas's props, and it's fine if Jokic is playing, and we'll see what the big Lithuanian can do against the big Serbian. But looking at the Pels, I mean, I'm really impressed with what they did in Golden State, and which is to say they got up by 20 in a game that mattered a ton for both teams. In a game where Draymond was trying to, light a fire, like test the young guys and see if they were really about that kind of playoff mentality. And they did respond. It's just that then Steph said, "All right, give me the ball. I'm just gonna light fires all over this defense," as he always does. And it didn't matter that the Pels are the number 1 3-point defense because he's just hitting absurd shots, and the avalanche starts. But now you got a little bit more desperation. You got a team that really needs to move above 500 here in an incredibly tight race in the Western Conference, and then the Nuggets are like 5 games ahead for the 1 seed, have no real motivation to try to close this one out. It's another situation where, like the Celtics, like I'm not buying that they got right just because they won 4 in a row against some bad teams, or some of them bad teams. They got the Bucks on a back-to-back. That was impressive, sure. But they dropped 5 out of 6, and including at home against physical, low-scoring teams like the Bulls and the Raptors. And that's what the Pelicans are at this point, but now playing a little bit of better offense and showing the ability to hang with the top teams in the West, at least, hanging with Golden State, wound up not covering. But I don't think, I think that's more of a Steph anomaly than anything.
Yeah, I love the play-in tournament, Nate. It's making the games much more fun. it's just making them so hard to pick because that is sort of the biggest factor in tonight's game and picking the Pelicans to cover 6.5, which I agree. And I really, didn't hit it early enough, to be honest with you. I was pretty tired last night. And by the time I was really looking at these lines, I was ready for sleep and didn't feel confident enough to just hit the Pellies at like 9.5, but probably should have. It's already been bet down, mostly because I think you're just kind of like, let's just get ahead of Joker not playing. It's also the care factor there about the MVP award. Like, how much does he? I don't know how to take that into consideration when everything that I read about this team is that he doesn't care. He's over it because he doesn't like the sort of volatility and hostility that was created around the conversation of MVP. And he wasn't a fan of that. So all of it is just sort of a turnoff for him. He doesn't even accept the award in the States. He just goes home so he can ride horses and receives the award there with his family, which is awesome. So my main point is it's just really difficult to predict. So fun for fans, not as fun for bettors when you're talking about everybody's either, being in this a little bit, right? So still having like 13 or at this point 11 teams in the West, but that does just make it even more so, so that a team like the Pelicans is going to come out and do what they can. In that Dubs game, they were winning, right? They were up by 20 points in the first half. The Dubs outscored them by 28 in the second half and ended up winning by 19. So that 19-point loss is just not exactly what happened. It was just basically like 7.5 minutes of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and even Jordan Poole being unconscious. So that's not necessarily going to be the case in this one. And I really, for the second bet here, I'm really looking at the total, and I'm just going to be staying on what happens with Joker. If Joker's in this 227.5, you got to get on it immediately. You got to hit it as soon as you can. In terms of the over, in my opinion, like this team's going to score 122 if Joker's on the floor for them in that building. If he's not, if you look at what they do without him, we're looking at about 105.5 points per game for this Nuggets team against a Pellies team that is really good at defense and did limit the Warriors to like 48 points in the first half. And then they just didn't keep playing defense. And the Dubs end up with 130 by scoring like whatever, close to 90 points in the second half. So that also was a little bit of fatigue. There are not three-point shooters with the equivalency of 3-point capabilities of Poole, Klay, and Steph, who all just vibe off each other at that point. Once it was just like a barrage, a compounding barrage of threes because they're all feeling off of each other's hot shooting stats last game. But as far as this one, like that's not going to be the case for the Nuggets. If Joker plays, there's still the possibility that he doesn't care quite as much. In which case, maybe you're looking a little bit more at a guy like Jamal Murray, who I think we'll talk about in player props video as well, just because of the fact that the Pelicans, this is a position you can get some points on. Jose Grand Theft Alvarado is not going to be in there, and he dropped 38 on them in that other game, right? And no Zion as well, which also leads to fewer points for a good defensive team. So the total, I wish I could just say do this, do that, but for me, it's really just I'm looking at it. If Joker's in, I'm going to go ahead and hit it before it goes back up. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of talking myself, Nate, and tell me what you think. Like I'm kind of talking myself into the fact that if Joker does come back in this game and all of a sudden this total just starts rising to like 231, 232.5, but we don't necessarily think Joker cares about this game too much, is that maybe the potential time to zag and take an under at that point?
Yeah, I'm leaning under in most Pelicans games at this point. I think, I would worry about it if Jokic is going to play. I think there's a good chance he does sit, though. With the back-to-back against the Suns and then Sunday game against the Warriors, so those are definitely bigger games to have him out there for. And the care factor might not be as much tonight. If you can get it now at a higher total and take the under, one thing you can do is FanDuel, the money line and total parlay, it doesn't move. So it's 231.5 still for the Pelicans to win and it to go under at plus 390. So that's probably where I would lean here and just then hope you get that notice that Jokic is going to sit tonight. And then, I wouldn't put it past the Pels to be able to win this game, even if he plays. Like I said, I'm very impressed with how they played in Golden State, and any team can lose at home at the Chase Center if Steph Curry goes off. But this is closer to that feisty Pelicans team we saw at the end of last season, where they will jump up and bite really good teams, especially if they don't have their focus and they don't have the motivation like the Nuggets probably don't tonight. So that's where I'm leaning, is the Pelicans to win or cover in a lower scoring game.
Yeah, and it's still going down as we're talking. Right as we started this video, is 227.5. It's 226.5 right now, with good odds on the under, obviously, because it's still getting lower and lower. But we'll see what happens where that total goes and how the Joker news impacts this game. I wish it was as easy as saying just wait for the news, but like it could be 15 minutes before game time and we still don't know. In which case, like you don't always have to make every single bet. And either way, especially if Joker's not in 6.5. Great number there for the Pels, who really need this game, as we talk about as we're coming down to the wire here in the standings. And I believe they're 9th in the West, and they'd love to rise a little bit higher, and that's very much available to them, as the Timberwolves are only half a game ahead of them in 7th, and the 6th place team is only 1.5 games ahead of them as well. So we're going to jump right into our first pick here, Nate, that you are liking in that Giannis. It is Giannis, and it's in that Boston and Bucks game.
Yeah, 31.5 points for Giannis is minus 110 at DK, whereas other books have him at 32.5. Same odds. So if you can find that at the best odds there. I also like some player performance doubles for Giannis, because 30 plus in a win is at least plus 150, and a double-double in a win, which is almost a guarantee with the way he rebounds, is even money. I think the Bucks are going to win. You can watch the game video to see why we explain. But I mean, you see the motivation from Giannis in really any game, but especially in these like high profile games. Against Boston, he had played pretty poorly in the regular season until his last one, where he had 36, 13, and 9, and 8 turnovers, by the way, kind of forcing it with a 40% usage rate, but got to the line 19 times, played 46 minutes. And those are the numbers I'm looking at. I mean, granted, like Boston's B team or C team was out there because it was a back-to-back for them. But it's just the aggressiveness and the motivation and the minutes for Giannis that you're trying to follow here. Because in 12 games since he came back from that wrist, he's averaging 31 points in 31 minutes. Like, so if he plays 36 minutes, what do you think is going to happen in at home? Since the Bucks went on this heater, 32.5 points, 12.5 rebounds in just 31 minutes per game. If you trust Boston to keep it reasonably close, I mean, we're talking about a 2-point spread here, then I'm following the minutes, assuming Giannis is going to continue to score. Rob Williams is on a minutes limit for Boston. Grant Williams is sick and might not be able to play, or might not be as full go here, and he was actually really good in the playoffs defending Giannis, just getting into his body. In the last 3 regular season games against Boston at home, Bucks offense has exploded. These have all been going over. They've scored 125, and Giannis has scored 33.7, playing 38 minutes per game. So it's exactly what I'm talking about. He's going to get the minutes. He should be scoring.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's Giannis versus this Celtics team. It's Giannis looking to clinch the 1 seed for his Bucks. And, I don't think he's necessarily jealous that Drew Holiday had 51 points last night, but maybe there was some internal understanding that Giannis was not going to try too hard. I say that. He had a 31-point triple-double with 17 rebounds, so it's tough to predict when he's not trying.
Because he's always 38 points in 32 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, 38-point triple-double. I shortchanged him, and then Drew had 51. They're going to have Chris Middleton back tonight, and they've looked pretty good with him as well, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be eating into anything that Giannis does against his team. There's many more answers on Boston for Chris Middleton than there are for Giannis. That goes for across the league as well. So I'm going to talk about that other game real quick and talk about Jamal Murray, 20.5 points. I'm taking it right now, minus 105 on DraftKings, good odds there, and I'm hitting it because whether Jokic plays or not, which is really the storyline of this game before it tipped, right? And we talked about that in the game video, where the total, we kind of like an under, even, I mean, it's already down to 226.5. So steady as she goes. I'm not saying just go ahead and hit the under right now, but like we like less points, especially if Joker doesn't play. So if Joker doesn't play, I'm getting ahead of Murray getting over 20 points for sure. If Joker does play, still highly likely that Murray can get over 20 points in this game. Without Joker this season, I mean, 22 points a game and 8 assists in his last 10 without Joker. That's more like 24.5 points without him, as he was obviously ramping up a little bit more slowly at the start of the season was Jamal Murray. His usage rate obviously goes up. It goes up to about 29% in the last 8 without Jokic versus like 25% with him on the season. And then for the Pelicans, not necessarily as good versus point guards. No Jose Alvarado as well. It helps, whomever is playing point guard, which will be Jamal Murray for the Nuggets. In their last 7, giving up the 6th most points per game. They are limiting assists to point guards. They're kind of limiting assists in general, but they've also been just playing awful point guards. And the fact that they're still giving up points. I mean, KPJ on the Rockets played him twice. Obviously, that's a scoring point guard, and you've played Steph, but like you've also played Portland twice in the Spurs, and Dame was not out there, I assure you, and neither was Tony Parker for the Spurs. So it's not like they had anybody play solid point guard for any of those teams that still got, like I said, the 6th most points against them at about 27 a game for point guards there. And yeah, Murray's just making sort of an uptick lately, getting ready for the playoffs. In his last 5, he's hit this prop 4 times. He's averaged 24.5 points as well. And that's exactly what he's averaged versus the Pels in his last 4 versus them, where he's shooting 48% from the field, but 44 from deep as well in 37 minutes versus this team the last 4 times he's played them, including a 32-point outburst that he had earlier this season against them. So I just think it's a really good matchup for him in a situation where even if Joker's playing, I think he'll be looking to dime up, and Murray should get those points.
But this is the best way to short Jokic not playing, right? Is to just
Also
take the Murray prop right now, and you're still probably good, like you're saying, even if he doesn't play. But even if he does play, but yeah, obviously huge usage if he doesn't have the MVP in there. I don't necessarily know how to feel about Jonas Valanciunas if Joker plays versus doesn't play. He's really had some weird fluctuating minutes against Denver in his last few. I will say this season in January, when he only played 19 minutes, it was probably more about his knee and calf issues, which he seems to be past at this point. He was really cooking in 6 games, and a big reason for the Pelicans winning 5 straight, averaging 18 points and 16 rebounds in those 6 games before slowing down against Golden State. And that's why I think his props are low. So I'm taking over 14.5 points or over 10.5 rebounds, a little more confidence in the rebounds even, given his stature there. But the usage rate has really gone up because CJ McCollum is dealing with a hand injury. So you see a 24% usage rate for Jonas in his last 7 versus 22% for CJ. CJ only getting 18 points per game. And yeah, Jonas putting up those big double-doubles. Inconsistent minutes, like I said, in his last few against Denver. Joker didn't play in a couple of those. Zion did play, so different factors to account for. The previous 3, though, when he's matching up with the Joker, 21 points per game, 11 rebounds, 3 assists in nearly 34 minutes per game. So it's, again, a situation where I follow the minutes. If I think he's going to get around 30, I think he's pretty much a lock for a double-double and probably 11 boards or more. And so I'm willing to take that with probably about the confidence of half a unit. I would say like 2 units on the Giannis bet tonight. So a little bit of a hedge here on the second pick.
I like it. No, I really like that because I love Joe Val. The fluctuation scares me. It didn't scare me the last time I took Joe Val with his points and rebounds because that was against the Charlotte Hornets. So a little bit of a different situation, but the Nuggets aren't exactly world beaters against centers. I mean, come on, the biggest knock on the Joker is just his inability to guard. I mean, the other best centers in the league. I don't want to shortchange him too much on defense, but for Joe Val tonight in a situation where, once again, not sure we're going to get the best version of Nikola Jokic if he even plays tonight. So I think you feel pretty good about Joe Val coming in, and if he has to, taking on Thomas Bryant, I guess. Man, that dude does not give him minutes. Zeke, Naji as well, probably not big enough to handle the big Lithuanian. So I'm going to close things out here with our final pick, Papa Al, as we call him, Mr. Al Horford. Starting with the points, 8.5, very low in our opinion. I almost said mine, but let's say ours. Minus 113 on FanDuel. You can look at the threes, 2.5, plus 125 for the big man. I think, what's interesting is Rob Will playing? And one, if Rob Will's not playing, then that's probably even more minutes for Papa Al, who already gets a lot of minutes against this Milwaukee Bucks team because of his defense. And then you've got the fact that if he's playing center, the Bucks are a little worse against centers. I mean, in the last 7 especially, they're giving up a ton of points to centers. I think the 4th most to that position since the last 7 games. You can get boards against them. them as well on the season as well. Centers getting some pretty good rebound numbers, which is surprising because Brook Lopez is favorite for Defensive Player of the Year. But that is the position that's been doing decently well against them. And I think if Papa Al is a little bit more in that position of a playing center with or without Rob Will, that does help you a little bit. He usually hits the same spots on the floor from offense anyway, right? And that is why you can probably like the threes a bit if he can get to that corner, the wing rather, and get out there where he hits a lot of those and all those corner ones. Man, he's lethal from there. So the 8.5 points is just low. I mean, since the All-Star break, 11 points per game. He's also got about more than 6 boards and 4 assists per game. He's at about a plus 48 for this team when he's on the floor. So he's going to be there. That's in 30.5 minutes. In his last 5, he's actually been down a few minutes, down to just 26, but he's still hitting more than 2 threes a game, just about 2.2, right? And that's at about 39% for the big man. So he's still shooting and getting his shots up, even though he hasn't even hit 30 minutes in those last 5 on average. And then versus the Bucks, we know he gets minutes. Like I said, he's got a D up against that huge front court. In the last 2 against them, 10.5 points per game in 32 minutes, and 2.5 threes, 45.5% from deep. So some really good shooting numbers because he is sort of the last man on that rotation when they're passing the ball around the wing against the Bucks, often whether he's on the wing or in the corner, like I said. And I'll let you talk about the head nod game for our boy when he had 30 points on 11 of 14 field goals, shaking his big, beautiful Haitian head. Talk about that for a minute.
He's Dominican, first of all.
Dominican, excuse me. God, that was terrible. My bad. Dominican.
But yeah, it was when Giannis dunked on him, gave him the stare down, got the tech, and then Horford proceeded to dominate the rest of the game en route to 30 points. And then he went ice cold in that series as the Bucks kind of just ran him off the 3-point line. So that's the one thing to give you pause here. But I like what you said about being the last man in the rotation here. If the Celtics are able to move the ball around and play the way they're capable of, they can get good looks against the Bucks, who, while they've been better against the 3 this year, is still giving up 38% in a recent stretch at home. So the plus odds on him to hit 3 threes, don't hate it. But it's another situation, yes, once again, where I'm just looking to follow the minutes. I think Rob, if he does play, he's probably only playing around 18 to 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And Al can play power forward, especially when you're talking about a Bucks team that's big all the time. So the Celtics almost, kind of saving him for this one. If you see that he's played 26 minutes per game his last 5, but now he's going to come in and definitely get, I think, north of 30 minutes against Giannis and company.
Yeah, and they've played a few smaller teams as well. And like you said, I think at the ripe old age of 36 or so, 37, Papa Al Horford is definitely someone that they're looking to conserve as they go into the playoffs as well. But this is a game that it's the last ditch effort, and I think if they're gonna get that 1 seed, I think they still want it enough. We'll see, but we do like the Bucks minus 2.5 in this one. So, and that is all the time we have for you today. Continue to follow along, like and subscribe. We got both game videos up for you as well. So until we see you next, happy betting.